Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's actually sunny and not particularly warm in Buffalo, but as long as the white stuff is not falling, which it did on Friday, I'm good. We're going in a positive direction. Opening day of baseball season is Thursday. So, hey, and playoffs are getting closer, but we'll start off with the pre-show. Enough optimism. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so let's talk chocolate chip cookies. That is my favorite type of cookie. And I was watching a show on it recently, and I wanted to see if my favorite tracked in it, and it did. And I'm not even done with it yet. The Food That Built America. It's a pretty good show, and on the History Channel. And so I decided to come up with my top 3 chocolate chip list. Now I will tell you, 1 and 2 depends on the day of the week, but it's probably 2. But I love the Entenmann's. Now that's the only soft type of chocolate chip cookie I will eat. The rest of them I'll pretty much throw out of hand. I'm not a big soft chocolate chip cookie guy. Chips Ahoy was my favorite for most of my life, and it probably still is, except if you go to a bakery. You can't count a bakery. Yeah. Bakeries are out for this. This is just mass-produced chocolate chip cookies. And then the third one is the Famous Amos. The Famous Amos are still really good, very consistent. So those are my top 3. I don't know what you guys have for favorites, but
I have to rule out because I do love the Nestle Toll House cookie, but the thing is that it's the best when it comes out of the oven and it's hot and gooey.
But that's not mass produced, right? So they're eliminated.
Well, the dough it's in that plastic wrapper, but I'll eliminate that. And I have no problem with your list. I would actually put Famous Amos number 1. Okay. And the reason I do is because there's a little saltiness to them. And I like that. It's not just sweet. It's dark chocolate or Belgian. I've seen like the new one. It's Belgian chocolate, so they're trying to be a little.
Well, you gotta have some bittersweet in there,
right?
But to mix the bittersweet once in a while.
But Kevin, like my my love of Coke over Pepsi, because Coke is sort of saltier and not as sweet as Pepsi is. Famous Amos, there is a little diversity of flavor there, and that's why I like them the best.
Yeah, this is a quick story about I'm in the baseball draft, and by coincidence it was yesterday, and I've been in this particular league for over 20 years, and I host it. And part of our tradition is I get chocolate chip cookies to serve at the lunch.
Nice.
But now we're all older, and we've noticed, my wife and I, that through the years, like I used to get you'd buy them by the dozen. And I used to buy like 4 dozen cookies for like 10 people. So it was like 4 each, and they're a little bit bigger. And now, like yesterday, I only bought 2 dozen, and we didn't even eat a dozen. And I think it has everything to do with the fact of everyone's A1C number, and that we've all gotten older.
I want your blood sugar. Can't have that. Yeah.
It's the thing called it's a thing called type 2 diabetes, which, by the way, I have. So but no, I love myself a good chocolate chip cookie. But the thing is, Russ, it's funny because I used to be exclusive that when I was a kid, and now all of a sudden I'm all over the board. It's like I like the peanut butter cookie, I like the Snickerdoodle.
Snickerdoodle, I'm like once in a blue moon. Peanut butter cookies, I'm all in. I like peanut butter cookies.
I love the oatmeal raisin cookies.
Oatmeal raisin's always a classic. It's never bad.
Yeah. Now. But then it gets a little ridiculous. Like I went to Panera this morning, to get a scone for breakfast, and they have a whole panoply of cookies, and they had a lemon drop cookie. And
I like the lemon drop. That's good.
I know, but it's like I'd never seen a lemon.
This predates you, Mike. Kevin would remember, but Sunshine, the Sunshine cookie company, made lemon drop cookies, and they were good.
Yeah, a lemon cookie with lemon chocolate morsels in it.
Oh, I like that. That would be good.
So yeah, I know. But
here's the weird thing. I wouldn't have thought this. So the chocolate chip cookie was invented in 1930. I would have thought it would have been sooner than that. Older than that, rather. I would have thought it would have been a lot older than just 1930.
Wow.
Me too.
Where it was invented?
There was a lady who ran like a Toll House Inn. And she was making chocolate chip cookies.
Okay, and I'll just go down this road for a second, because if you talk about the cookies of your youth that were sort of mass produced, that the iced oatmeal cookies, I remember the Christmas the sort of anise flavored cookies with the multicolored
Yeah, they were pretty good.
And the Vortman's cookies that were like in a wheel, they're like wheel shaped with the hole in the middle. I mean,
you know what you do for those, and I think Nabisco owns all of those. Yes. If you get the Danish cookie tin, you can't go wrong with that.
There's a reason I'm diabetic, and those cookies are part of that, and Oreos and everything else. So anyway,
you see, Oreos I'm okay with, but I don't get them often.
Yes. One thing that's sort of a derivative of cookies, but just a thumbs up or thumbs down. Nuts in brownies, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
I'll tell you this. There's a famous story in my family. So I'm a big chocolate pudding guy, right? And I love it. And my grandmother would make it. And one day she decided to throw a curveball. And this was literally when we got back from like the baseball game. And my grandfather, who rest in peace, was, he died when I was young. I was like 12, right? So this was right before he passed. And he was like, Russ, we got chocolate pudding. Because even when I went out to a restaurant, he made sure they had chocolate pudding for me. And I said, great. And so I went and I took a bite and it had nuts in it.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't like this. And the look on my grandfather's face, and then all of a sudden my mother's face and my father's face, you would have thought I did the worst thing that I could have done in the world. And I just was like, I'm not eating it. And they gave me the look like, you better eat it. Like my dad gave me the look. He didn't say anything audibly, but he gave me the look like, you better eat that. Or bad things are going to happen.
I'll quickly admit a weird thing when it comes to pudding with myself. I don't like pudding when it's cold, when it's been put in the refrigerator.
Oh, really? You don't like the skin on it? Is that what the thing is?
I hate it. That grosses me out. The fleshy consistency of it, I don't like that. And I don't like Jell-O in spite of my name. But I love pudding when it's just been cooked, when it's hot. Like when you're pouring it into a pie crust. I love like lemon pudding or key lime pudding or whatever hot, but cold. Anyway, all right.
How about nuts on hot fudge sundaes? Do you like nuts on?
Yeah, the candied nuts. They're great.
Yes, and whipped cream, but no cherry.
I like maraschino cherries. So
yeah, Mike. I mean, that's like your whole life. You should put the cherry on top once in a while. That is the joy of life.
That really is a metaphor for your life.
Oh no, please.
It really is.
I have to always exclude something. I go to McDonald's, it's a Big Mac without sauce. It's like I have to, and that's the reason why I review everything as I leave, because I know that they're going to put sauce on it, and I'm not going to eat the goddamn thing. So anyway,
okay, fine.
There's I saw this article about food items that are going the way of the dodo, and one of them is Sundays. That young people and people under 40 have come along in the McFlurry Blizzard era, and they don't even think about Sundays. They prefer
to me. I still like a Sunday.
Well, and the weird thing is, Kev, if you go to like Dairy Queen or Sonic or one of these places that really does ice cream a lot, the Sonic Blast or the McFlurry or whatever, that's always like $4 even for a small one. But a hot fudge sundae is $2.15. So I'm going the way of not that I'm a cheapskate, but I'm going the way of the Sunday. I know
you're a cheapskate. You go to McDonald's, you get a $1 soda, and you went to another place.
When I was a kid, the small sundae at the Dairy Queen or the Tasty Freeze, which is what I lived like a block from, was 19 cents. They were
19 cents.
Yeah, 19 for a small, 29 for a medium, 39 for a large. And
with
the
Mr.
Kresge. Yeah, are you familiar with Kresge's? Kresge's was the first department stores.
Yes.
They were the forerunner of Kmart's.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they had the the bar, the countertop there, and always every summer they ran a month-long, maybe even 2-month-long promotion where you popped a balloon and then you paid whatever price was in a little sheet of paper for the Sunday.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it was like 1 cent.
In the New York metro area, Kev, we had Woolworth.
Yeah, same deal. Exactly the same. But they're 5 and 10s they were called.
Yes.
Dime stores was another
name store,
name. Yeah, for sure.
And Russ and I grew up near Carvel ice cream, so we had
those.
Or Mr. Softy around. It was 25 cents for an ice cream sandwich, Russ. It was 25 cents for the pinwheel ice cream sandwich. So I remember that. Yeah, but anyway, so what
was also not talked just to bring it back to sports a little bit. When you're my age, like baseball cards were a really big thing in the 1960s, and everybody talks about opening packs, which is true. But at all the drugstores, Cunningham's drugstore in particular, you had machines where you'd put a nickel in and you'd pull it, and you'd get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cards.
So we didn't have those. We just went to the candy store and bought the packs.
Yeah, so you had those cards, and the Cunningham's drugstore was right next to the Kresge's, so you could get your hot fudge sundae, and then if you had money left, you could go the next day or next door and buy, pull the lever. It had more of a Willy Wonka lottery effect as you were pulling out the cards.
The odd thing about baseball cards, and we'll start after this. The odd thing is but when I was a kid and I was collecting baseball cards, they used to have like open boxes of Topps cards at like the Wegmans or Topps or whatever supermarket, like with the gum. It was gum and Tic Tacs and candy bars and Topps baseball cards. It was right there. Yeah, and you could buy an individual pack for 40 cents. Yeah. You don't see that anywhere. The only place you can buy cards now, if it's not
letter lock and key.
Yeah.
And it's usually Target or Walmart.
Yeah, it was a nickel a pack when I was collecting in the 60s. So
inflation.
Yeah, for me it was like I think a quarter. I think it was a quarter by the time I was really into collecting.
Yeah, we used to buy, once I got a paper route in like 1966, I was just buying whole boxes for $1.20. So.
Yeah, you know what it was? I know you were with the quarter. No, you know what? I think it was 50 cents for the cello packs, for the giant cello packs.
Yeah.
I think it was 50 for that.
Yeah.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, April 4th, 2022, and I'm pissed off that I didn't get a cookie puss for my birthday.
I'm Russ Cohen, and if you basically tilt Cookie Puss, it's Fudgy the Whale. It's the same mold.
I know.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I don't know how Mike can complain because he didn't even want to acknowledge it was his birthday.
Well, I didn't want to acknowledge. I still want the gifts and the cakes, and I'm like, well, and this is the Hockey Buzz. I want all the pluses and not the minuses. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with some sad news that's sort of been bleeding out over the last 24 to 48 hours. Mike Bossy, who was diagnosed with cancer last year. It's come out from a number of sources that he's in basically hospice care.
Yeah, palliative care.
Yeah, and it's not sounding good. And Kev, this really hits me because I wasn't an Islander fan, but I was an appreciator of great hockey players, and from the time I was 10 years old to my teens, Mike Bossy. I'll forgive me when it comes to Gretzky or somebody. Mike Bossy was the quintessential goal scorer. He was the sniper. He was the purest goal scorer of my youth. And we know that Clark Gillies passed away recently, and now Bossy is in deep trouble right now, and it's sad.
Yeah, it really is. Mike Bossy, I brought this up before, but when I got the job as the national writer for USA Today, Mike Bossy was the first player that I interviewed. I went to, I can't remember what he was going on, but I went to, flew out to LaGuardia and went to Nassau Coliseum and did a big piece on him. And he just couldn't have been a nicer guy. And that was my dealings with him. He was always just, a fun guy to sit and chat with, just very polite, very humble for a guy that had that consecutive streak of 50-goal seasons. And, he just, if you met him in the grocery store, you would not think he was a guy that, was a 50-goal scorer in the National Hockey League. But he certainly was, and he beat a lot of guys wide on that wing, and he had an incredible release and shot. And, the game was different back then. We don't score as much off the rush as they did back then. And he and Trache, we talk about lines, and Gillies contributed a lot to that line he was the heavy, the tough guy on the line. But that the chemistry between Trache and Bossy is just incredible. It was almost hard to describe, but it was almost I would equate it to the Sedines. That sixth sense of knowing where they were, because they made some remarkable plays just by the experience they had of playing together and just sort of understanding the way the other player thought.
Yeah, they were the best duo. They were the best duo I've ever seen. I looked up the points. I texted it to all of us earlier. 3,248 points on that line. Like, it's just insane. But this was the way my youth was growing up as a Ranger fan on Long Island. With the Islanders had just moved in a couple of years they were getting good. And you open Newsday and it's Mike Bossy gets 2 goals. Rangers lose. You open up the next day, Mike Bossy hat trick, Rangers lose. Then Mike Bossy scores 2 against the Rangers in the playoffs. The Rangers lose. Like, I saw so much and heard so much and watched so much Mike Bossy that you couldn't help but say this guy was an unbelievable player, even if you hated the whole franchise like I did.
Yeah, you have PTSD from hearing Mike Bossy's name.
Yeah, but I gotta say, we call him like a sniper, and he is. But like, it was great that Kevin said he could score off the rush, because he wasn't just a guy that had a favorite spot on the ice like Ovechkin. He really did score in a lot of different ways. But a lot of that had to do with Trache too, because Trache had amazing vision, and he would just put pucks where he knew Bossy could get to him as well. And that really happened, like, literally, I want to say, like, 2 years after they started playing together, maybe 1 year after they started playing together. There was not an instant chemistry, I would say, but like almost instant. It was really amazing.
But what people don't realize about Bossy is, and believe me, being in Buffalo and hearing the fact that the Sabres took Rick Sealing, I think, a pick or 2 ahead of Bossy, and I mean, for years with Bossy scoring 50 goals every year, oh my god! And Rick Sealing was a fine pro,
he was a good player,
but he's sort of like the Bobby Orr of forwards in the sense that he started at age 20, his career was over by 30. The only year that he didn't score 50 goals was the last year when I think it was back problems.
Back trouble, yeah. He started to get a bad back, I want to say maybe 3 years before he hung it up. But it wasn't just like he had back trouble and he quit.
It was automatic 50 goals every year, and I'm just looking at his stats. In 2 years, 82 and 84, he was a plus 69 and a plus 66. I mean, that's unheard of. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he was just that guy that goalies feared. Like, if you were facing Mike Bossy on a breakaway, forget it.
Yeah,
you were losing.
And his shot was really good. I mean, not in a overpowering Al McGinnis way, but more of a he could pick the corners and he could do it on the rush. He just needed to see a little bit of the net, which he did in that era, because the goalies, didn't look like the Michelin man.
Well, that was something I was going to say, Kev. And I forgot to say it because we forget stuff now, but you brought it back. He was the first guy for me that was going top shelf regularly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fair.
This is, I mean, and just finalizing on this. I saw a bunch of video over the last week of Rick Vive, who holds the record for most goals for Toronto in a season with 55, and Austin Matthews is likely to break that.
And Rick Vive hurt me. He physically hurt me.
I know. We've heard that.
He's a nice man, but he physically hurt me.
Yes, Russ's hand is still recovering. But if you watch like the video of Rick Vive, I swear to God, like in the seasons that he scored 50, he scored goals that aren't getting scored anymore. Like coming over the blue line, mid face-off circle, wind-up slap shot, beating a goaltender who is not, as you said, Kev, like the Michelin man with all the padding and everything. Bossy scored a lot of those goals too, but he also scored them in close. And I don't know if the game is better or worse when goals like that go in or don't go in. I mean, I look back fondly at a guy coming over the blue line and blasting it past the goaltender. It doesn't happen anymore. Yeah,
I missed that, actually. The romance of that goal has been lost. Like, there's a gasp now instead of a cheer when that happens. Like, right. People expect, the broadcasters tell us all the time, if a goalie sees it, he stops it.
Right.
And so now, like, you just think of the great Guy Lafleur goal against Gilbert. where, that we considered, we were all written that up as a bad goal.
Yes.
He was off balance. He wasn't square to the shooter. You got to stop that shot. That's what you say in the press box.
Yeah, Kev, I do feel the same way. I felt it in the press box the other day, actually, because in one of the Flyers games, and I forget who they were playing against, one of the teams, they were up by a goal, literally after you crossed the red line, there were 3 guys there. Back in those days, there wouldn't have been anybody there.
Yeah. Well, and every defense had a guy that wasn't as good on his skates as the other 5 guys on his team. There was still room for the the lumbering defensemen. Yeah, we don't have those guys anymore. Like I remember exactly when it was, but at one point, you would say a guy was a poor skater. I never use that phrase anymore because they're not really poor skaters. They're just subpar on the basis of what's average in the NHL. They're really good skaters. Like if you put them out, in recreation hockey, they would all look like Bobby Orr, But
because he's in the media, I'll be nice about it. But I kind of put Hal Gill in that territory. Like he was kind of like the last of one of those guys.
Yeah. And as a forward, a guy like Dave Andrechuk was extremely slow. But
but when you watch those guys, and that's what happened. I watched Bob Rouse skating laps, and Rouse was doing just skating around the rink, and I was sitting in the stands waiting for practice to start, and I just made a mental note. I'm never going to call anybody a poor skater again because Bob Rouse was not considered a great skater, and he was flying around the rink. And then the other guys are like that too. Terry O'Reilly was not a good skater, but if you saw him skating by himself and watch him pivot and skate backwards, you would go, he's a pretty good skater, just not by NHL standards. One other point about Mike Bossy that was really more about Brian Trottier was when you met those two, it was like they were running a good cop, bad cop. Trottier was a little surly.
He was salty.
Yeah, well, he was. Yeah, he could be surly, and he was crabby, and Mike was always a nice guy. And I always kind of felt like Mike sometimes would, because they knew that Trotz was a little more difficult. He just tried to be a little nicer because, he knew what didn't go well when the reporter was trying to get something out of Trotz.
Kev, did you feel that when he retired, Bossy? I met him at like a junior hockey game. He was in the press box. He was almost kind of like shy, it seemed.
Well, I don't think I didn't feel he was shy because once you got him, he was good. Like Kessel is shy. Like it's hard to really get anything, good out of him. I knew him pretty well, and I never really did all that well, with him. But one thing I would remind everyone, and the same is true of Vor. Like if he had this back injury today, he would have played till he was in his mid-30s or later because we have so many different ways to deal with it. Right. And the rehab is different. The surgeries are all different.
Yeah. But we talk about him in a different way, though, because he did retire young. Like, if he would have struggled his last 3 years after a 17-year career, we'd have been like, hey, he was amazing his first 10 years. And then we would have been like, but,
But Russ, he had 573 goals in 10 seasons. If he played 16 or 17 seasons, he probably would have come close to beating Gordie Howe's record.
Maybe. Like he could have fallen off too. Like you just don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean Russ's point is a valid one. When you it's like Jim Brown. He retired at we never saw Jim Brown struggle.
No.
We never saw Barry Sanders and the NFL struggle.
Right.
And when guys quit and they're on the tab, I mean, we did see Bobby Orr a little bit, like he wasn't the same player,
right?
Because of the
Blackhawks, it was a little sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, he instead of having remember in the early 70s, knee surgery meant open invasive surgery. It wasn't arthroscopic surgery. He wasn't back in 4 weeks. Sometimes he's essentially playing on one leg. That's why I always say that Bobby Orr is the best player of all time because Howe and Gretzky didn't have to really deal with that debilitating injuries, and he was still the best player in hockey for that span of 7 or 8 years.
I mean, I'll just give you kind of shows where they're at. The hip replacement when it started was a 4-day stay in the hospital, and a knee replacement, and now my son's son-in-law's father just had knee replacement a couple months ago or 3 months ago. They did it at 7:00 in the morning, and he was sitting at his kitchen table eating lunch at noon.
Well, I'll even give you one, Kev, from the 80s. This was about 1986, and I won't get into my whole life story. How I couldn't walk till I was 5, but when I used to go to doctors' checkups, they would say, "Hey, if you had to get hip surgery," this was back in like 1986. It was a metal hip, and it was 6 months of rehab.
Yeah.
And my wife was right next to me. She was my girlfriend, and she still married me. So a couple of years later, but I was looking down at the barrel of that, and I still have never had to get surgery, luckily. So
good decision, bad decision, good decision. But okay, I'll use this as a segue. One of the things that made Mike Bossy possible, especially in the 70s and 80s, with playing in the same division as the Flyers and a lot of physical teams, is that he had Clark Gillies on his line, basically saying, "If you touch him, you die." And nobody was going to mess with Clark Gillies, and they had Nystrom and other players as well. After what happened on the weekend on Friday in that Coyotes-Ducks game, Kev, I know Teemu Selanne surprisingly went on Twitter, and for people who don't know, Trevor Zegras at the whistle tried to knock the puck loose from the Arizona Coyotes goaltender. Jay Beagle went in and knocked him down, and then when Troy Terry took up for his teammate, Beagle beat the crap out of him. There's a picture on Twitter of Terry with a black eye and bruises all over his face. And Teemu Selanne went online and said, "Well, if Ty Domi was on our team, this wouldn't have happened." I mean, I know, Russ, it's like you're going back to the 80s or the 70s. I still think there is a place in this game for to have a player on your roster to strike a little bit of fear in the other team in terms of, if you mess with somebody, we're going to mess with you. What do you think, Kev?
Well, it's really bothersome because of the phrasing too.
Tyson Nash.
Tyson Nash, and he doubled down on it.
Right. He was trying to skill us.
Yeah.
What was the word he used? That
was the word.
Yeah. He was trying to skill. Isn't that the whole idea?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, can't we be a little bit more enlightened? To think that these guys, and there's only 2 or 3 or 4 of them, Svechnikov can do it well, Zegras can do it well. Instead of just going on, give them credit for figuring out how to do this, and then somebody sit down and figure out how to stop them. Like, I've seen other players think, I'm not bothered by it. I'm just sitting around thinking, well, what do we got to do to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, there are 2 things that have driven me crazy about this. Sorry, Mike. 2 things that really set me off. One was the Tyson Nash remarks, and then doubling down on it the next day, saying, "Well, I shouldn't have said skilled us." Oh, okay, that makes it better. But you were basically saying he had it coming, and they had it coming. And then others writing, "Well, at the end of the game, it was Zegras who poked a stick at the goalie, so that's why it happened." And it's like, you know what? Stop with the baloney. They didn't like the way he scored that goal. All they were looking for was an excuse to beat the hell out of him.
Yeah,
that's right.
That was the point I was going to make. It was like, don't tell me this doesn't have to do with the Michigan goal. It doesn't have to do, because give me $1 for every time a forward has poked at the glove of a goaltender. It's not the equivalent of fighting words. It was the fact that they got embarrassed because he did the wraparound Michigan and scored on that one, and Beagle had a bee in his bonnet, was looking to give him a little negative reinforcement. And it's like, that's crap.
But you know what? Just to get to Kevin's point, though, about being more enlightened, there was something else that happened on that play that really has not happened on a Michigan goal. Milano stood in the corner basically as a pick, like you would set a pick in basketball, and Zegras did it around him, and the goalie never saw it coming. That's brilliant. They obviously practiced it that way.
Now,
There's another part of that I don't think has gotten enough attention. Like, I've certainly seen all of the Michigan goals.
Yeah.
I don't think it was better executed, any of them, as well as this one was. The amount of time it took him to get that puck on his stick and around the goal, and this was a real lacrosse style goal.
Yes.
I mean, it was a lacrosse whip, but he got that on his stick in less than a second. Like, it was just like a quick shovel, and I couldn't believe how quickly.
I know. It was unbelievable. It really was.
He carried it from one post around the other post and then wrapped it around Milano. That's how good it was. And it didn't take like 5 or 6 seconds. It was one stride and he was around him. So, but I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I'm a Neanderthal, so I like fighting and I like the physicality of the sport. I don't want to see it go, but we know that it's waning now. Thursday night, I was at the Winnipeg-Toronto game. That game was built up a little bit because of the fact that the last time the two teams met was the night that Neil Pionk took out Rasmus Sandin's knee, and then Jason Spezza ran Pionk and got the 4-game suspension, or I think it was a 6-game suspension, and then knocked down to 4. Everybody was expecting something to happen. The Leafs put Wayne Simmons and Kyle Clifford into the lineup. After the game was basically decided and Austin Matthews scored his 50th goal, Clifford goes out there, and it's a fight that's meaningless because it's like the game is over with. There's no point in it. They send out Simmons, and Simmons and Adam Lowry are mouthing back and forth at each other, and the referee gives them a misconduct before they even do anything. And that's the thing. You're seeing this more and more in the game, Kevin. I hate it. Is like the referees are there preventing fighting from even the guys dropping gloves. It's one thing for them to separate them. They're throwing them out before there's fighting words.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to do preemptive strike. The other element to this that I think is aggravating is, look, if guys get into fights in the name of protecting, the meek, guys that don't fight, I'm fine with that. Like, I don't need it, but, if that's the way it's going to be, you don't want a teammate who never fights being accosted by someone who's just trying to intimidate him. But that's not what happened here. They're basically, they got attacked because their guy, the Ducks, was more skilled and could do things that your team couldn't do. And that, that's just wrong. And so, like, if a guy had, made a fancy move on a shootout, are you going to attack him? It's just ridiculous that we have to get to that. Like, at least if you're protecting or defending someone, you can argue that it's the emotion of, he's my guy and I want to protect him. What are you arguing here? That they have more talent, so we have to beat them up?
Yeah, so. I mean, what Jay Beagle did was the first thing that Jay Beagle did almost all year. But we saw some of that on Sunday. I didn't see this until about an hour ago. Jack Hughes got hit by Oliver Wahlstrom of the Islanders, and PK and Hughes was hurt. It wasn't a dirty hit. It was just like it was an odd hit, and Hughes twisted his ankle or something. PK Subban basically attacked Wahlstrom, says, "You touch our star player, you're going," and he jumped Wahlstrom and hit him with about 5 or 6 punches. And then after the game, Barry Trotz basically said it was lucky that Subban got thrown out of the game, meaning that Matt Martin or whoever else was in the lineup. And it was like, okay, you can't defend your star player when he gets hit or gets hurt by somebody. I mean, that's what, if you touched Gilbert Perreault back in the day on Buffalo, somebody was going to get.
Of course. I do want to get back to something you said, Mike, though, because you don't realize you watched another game where the refs did what you said. They early on, there was going to be a fight between Wayne Simmons and Zach McEwen, and the refs broke it up. They preempted it. They got right in the middle of it, and they said no. But then in the third period, with time winding down, maybe there's 5 minutes left in the game, and a game that was already settled, that fight still happened, and it showed how inexperienced Zach McEwen is to even take that fight with Wayne Simmons because he got completely tuned up. And it was like, that was completely unnecessary. It was like, it made no sense. It may have made sense in the first period when they were pushing each other out of the way and playing legitimate hockey to the point where at the end of the game where it was just nothing. Like, why even
I got the feeling that was Wayne Simmons showing off to the fans in Philadelphia.
I think so too, but again, didn't need to happen when it happened.
No, it didn't.
And there is a long tradition of officials, kind of policing in a preemptive manner, and we sort of have caught wind of that now because we hear them on the ice saying, when there's like 4 or 5 seconds, you hear a referee saying, "Hey guys, there's only 4 seconds left. No, let's not be stupid out here now. Let's everybody calm down." One of those type things.
Kevin Collins, the White Knight, he always used to jump in. He had the reputation of jumping in too early. I mean, I heard many stories from many former players about him. When it wasn't necessary, or he needed to jump in, and they hated that. But one other thing from that game, Kev, that Russ and I and Anthony talked about on Off the Post, I wanted to get your feeling on it, was the Flyers' decision to bench Keith Yandle on Saturday, thus ending his consecutive game streak at 989 games. And, my feeling on this, and I want to get your, the Flyers season is over with. If there was a question of not playing him because he wasn't a good defenseman anymore, that maybe should have happened earlier in the season, maybe right after he broke the record. But they continued to play him, and he was 11 games away from 1,000. And they decided, okay, we're going to play a college kid, and we're going to play Nick Seeler, who's a borderline NHLer, over Keith Yandle, when this might be the end of his career. I really think, and Elliot Friedman said it about an hour ago, this is not a good look on the Flyers. We know that, he's probably not one of your better defensemen, but you let him end it on his terms, not what they did. And I think what they did was stupid.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't even know how you defend that. You've let it go this far. You've got nothing to play for. You just let that play out, and then it's on someone else's watch, to worry about it. And, you owe it to the guy. I mean, he's put in a lot of time in this league, whether or not he's a good player now or not. That doesn't matter. A lot of teams he's helped through the years, and, he's been a good guy too. There's a lot of people around. Only till in recent years have there been any issue as people kind of would weigh in about whether he should be given special treatment because he was on a quest to break the record. But before then, he's always one of the more popular guys in the dressing room. He's glib. He's, fun to be around. So I don't know. It just makes no sense for them to do that. It's almost like you're trying to say, well, it's our team. We're going to do what we want. No, sometimes you just owe a guy something. And I think that the league, therefore the Flyers owed Yandle the chance to kind of go out with dignity.
And Russ, I said if the quality of play ship has sailed with Yandle, it's like it would have been that earlier in the season. If he wasn't one of the top 6, then they should have sat him down. But now at the end of the year, when you're eliminated from the playoffs, when you have nothing really to play for other than maybe giving some young guys a chance to play, even if that pairing of Adard and him would have been worse than Seeler and him, that's not the point. And the open comments of Kevin Hayes after the game, I think, raised a little bit of discontent with the organization, the where and how it is.
Well, he's got a lot of years on his deal, so he could raise the discontent.
Sure.
They definitely should have done it to Yandle right after the streak. I had said that way back, but I still wouldn't have stuck Ronnie Adard with Keith Yandle. That you can't develop this guy playing next to Keith Yandle, who is 2 steps behind. Now, they could have maybe taken Ristolainen out and put Adard on the second pair, but that's still not where he is in his development, not even close, because they have York on the top line. They are trying to develop some guys here, whether it's a bad team or not. So I am not going to kill the Flyers for this, but it could have happened much sooner for sure.
Yeah, these games are not going to make or break that kid's career.
No, but you do want him off on the right foot. You don't. Do you really?
Yeah, but I don't know. Okay. It was something he probably would tell his grandkids. I would have played, but Yandle was going for it's just a story, a part of your career. There was not much harm in letting Yandle play. It was minor, in my opinion. I mean, you can argue that, yeah, the kid would have been better to get some games now, but it's not going to be a big difference. So I would have just given him his game and let him ride off into the sunset.
All right, taking a look at the races in the West and the East, and I have to say this to Ak, who is not here today. Who has won 5 games in a row? Who is holding the last wild card spot in the Western Conference? Oh, it's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Impossible, Mike. Can you please look again and make sure?
I just double checked. E5, Russ.
All right.
Well, I do think I talked about this thing. I thought they had a chance to go 8-0. I still think they have a chance to do that. I know Russ thought it was 6-2.
Yeah.
6-2, 7-1 probably are more likely, but this next game against Vancouver, the second game against them, they beat them last night. I think that's probably doing. But these 8 games are crucial.
They are.
They've got to go at least 6-2 in my opinion.
They do.
And Leonard is back.
Which will help them.
Yeah, Alec Martinez is back in the lineup.
Right.
So I mean, the thing is, they're playing their playoffs right now, and everybody knows it.
Yes.
And everybody's looking at the West right now and saying, it's going to be Vegas and Dallas fighting over the last playoff spot. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, Nashville is coming precariously but they have games in hand. The team, I keep saying, even though they won 6-1 over Anaheim yesterday, the team I think is in the most precarious position is Edmonton, because they don't have all the games in hand, and they're only up 4 points on Dallas. They go into a losing streak, Russ. They're the team that I still think falls
right.
out.
Yeah. The amazing thing is, if they'd have just upgraded their goalie and gotten like 3 more wins, they could have won the division. And now it's a difference of being out of the playoffs. Like, it's that close. That's really what you're looking at with the Oilers. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit. Not Marc-Andre Fleury.
No, just a slight upgrade.
Yeah, if you added Korpisalo or something
Jake
like
Allen,
that.
There's guys.
Yeah, so
Turned out Korpisalo was hurt though, wasn't he?
Well, no, right, that's true.
Okay,
I mean,
but Jake Allen would have been a good ad.
And he was just coming back from injury.
He doesn't make too much money. He's not a big salary guy.
Yeah, although Montreal announced early they weren't going to trade him.
Yeah, right. You never know.
So.
I mean, Braden Holtby got hurt. He was out for the year. Khudobin got hurt. He was out for the year. So did Korpisalo. But there were still goalies out there. Like Craig Anderson said, he would have agreed to be traded to specific places. There were
Anderson would be an upgrade on Koskinen.
Yeah. So, but right now you've got 3 teams. I mean, I think it's safe to say now after this weekend, Winnipeg is probably done at 76 points and Vancouver is done at 74 points. But right now you've got 3 teams fighting for 2 wildcard spots. Nashville, Vegas are at 82, Dallas at 81. Edmonton is at 85 in 3rd place in the Pacific. The other news in the West, Sean Monahan is out for the rest of the season with a hip injury. Calgary has been mortal the last few games with Kev. I mean, even though he was playing down in their lineup, I mean, now it looks like the reason he was playing down in their lineup was because he was injured all this time.
Yeah. It's funny about Calgary. I've said for the last 2 or 3 years, like all the things that I've learned about that I thought I learned were true, about experience and, they just have turned out not to be true in recent years. And one of them is that little things matter. And I'd watched a lot of the Flames game and I kept pointing out that, Colorado was one of the worst face-off teams and Calgary is one of the best face-off teams. Their penalty kill was superior. They do all the little things well. Like Calgary is very difficult to play against. Colorado is a great offensive team, but they're not particularly hard to play against. Everything. So all these little things favored Calgary. But then I watched Calgary play Colorado last time, and Colorado just looked like the better team, not even close. And so. I don't know what to make of it, but
this is a weird time of the year, though. It is. I'm not. The last 3 or 4 games, I'll put more stock into. Right now, I do think some teams, like even the Rangers, they're experimenting like crazy on their lines and D pairs, and at some point they'll stop doing that.
And I think think the reason that they're doing it, Russ, is because they're pretty much locked into who they're going to play. I mean, unless something really
they're playing the Penguins.
They're playing.
They're only 4 points back, though, right?
I know, but they're probably playing the Penguins.
Right. I mean,
but you got if they'd have won these 2 games,
right? Unless Carolina goes into a losing streak that allows the Rain. I mean, the Rangers in Pittsburgh have 12 games left. Carolina has 13 games left. There's a 4-point deficit. I don't know how many times the Carolina and the Rangers play, and maybe they don't even play, and maybe their season series is over with. But right now, it looks like it's going to be Rangers and Pittsburgh. So maybe Gerard Gallant feels that he, has the wherewithal to toy with the line. I mean, I was surprised.
He played Julien Gauthier again, who's been scratched for, 21 games or something.
And he's playing Andrew Kopp in front of the net on the power play, which is
they were really experimenting. I did want to mention, Mike, quick signing. The Canadians did sign Emil Heineman to a 3-year deal.
And he's going to play in Laval.
I still think he's a second or third liner in the NHL. I do. He's very talented. I don't think he'll be in Laval very long, and I do think it was a hell of an ad for Montreal, and I do think he could be a really good player.
He was part of the Sherratt deal. So,
yeah.
But okay, so in the East, in spite of what our friend Eck has written today, in spite of the fact that the Islanders beat the New Jersey Devils yesterday and now are only a measly 11 points.
Just it seems so close, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really close. It's just so close. I mean, okay, I give the Islanders credit for sort of battling back and not quitting, Kev. But
yeah, they've played well actually. 7-3 in their last 10. And
yeah, but again, they were undone. And the funny thing was, we were talking about this yesterday. They weren't undone by the road trip because they went over 500 on the road trip. They were undone by the bulk of home games after that, where they were hit with COVID, and they weren't playing well at that time, and that's what killed them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we talked about this before, and I know Russ disagreed with me on this, but I think they're still okay. Like, I still think they're a competitive team. I don't think they have to rebuild. And
do you not think they'll make a trade at all this summer?
Oh, they may, but that's different than rebuilding. Rebuild to me is, we should actually have a dictionary. But a rebuild is, when you change the majority of players on your team. I don't think they're going to do that.
I think they need to retool. I think they need to retool, and I think they're afraid to say it.
I think what they have to do is trade one of their $5 million forwards for a $5 million defenseman.
They may do that. What I hear is, they, contrary to them, just bottoming out, Lamoriello was looking around the league for a defenseman, and I think they'll still do that in the offseason. They just have never recovered, first from losing Taves, and then trading away Leddy.
Right.
Both those
if
guys.
They don't sign Mayfield long term, they could lose him.
Yeah, I think they will sign him though.
They'll probably, if they can't sign him, they'll probably trade him before that, Russ, so they can get something back for him. But I mean, the thing is, Devin Taves is having one of the better years this year of any defenseman.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And he's making $4.1 million for another 2 years. That type of defenseman at that salary is something that would have fit perfectly with the Islanders, but at the time that he was looking for that salary, they couldn't afford to pay him $4.1 million.
But they should have done something else. Like, they knew what kind of player he was. But again, I will say this is a function of having Barry Trotz as a coach. He's an excellent coach, but he has his system and his way. And so, like, someone like Taves to him was like, all right, we could play without him. Don't worry about it. But for the future, they really needed Devin Taves, because with everything that's going on with them, and the fact that they need points, he would have been a massive addition still in this lineup, and they would have had to lose somebody else. I get it.
Yeah, I agree with you sort of, but let me restate it. Just in terms of the reason why they thought like that wasn't so much that, it was Trotz. It was Lamoriello saying essentially, Well, Trotz can do a lot with a subpar defense because of his system, and I need all of my offensive guys. So I have a better shot of winning giving away Taves than giving away one of my offensive guys, because that's exactly what happened.
Okay, and that may have been the thing, but that was a misjudgment on their part for sure.
Well, yeah, because as it turns out, Taves wasn't just a normal defenseman, as you pointed out. He, contributed both ways and, all that kind of stuff. But the thing they really miscalculated is the importance of his salary.
Yeah,
that's what they've. He looks like a bargain now.
Right, that's the whole thing. If he'd have gone somewhere and signed for 6.5, you'd be like, all right, I get it. They can't fit that in. But they gave Colorado a gift.
And barring the Eck miracle of the Islanders closing the gap and beating out the Capitals, right now, it looks like the Capitals will have a first round match against Florida. Florida is up over Carolina for top spot in the East. They're the first team in the NHL to guarantee themselves a place in the postseason, Kev. But the one thing I noticed this weekend, they're playing looser defensively than they have since earlier in the season. They were losing 6-2 to New Jersey on Saturday, came back and scored 5 straight to win 7-6. And maybe it's a blip. Maybe it's the fact that they're sort of home and cooled out, and they're going to win first place in the Atlantic. But when you get to the playoffs, and this is the same criticism I've had of Toronto, you've got to play a little more disciplined two-way. And I don't know whether this is the year where a team can just play balls out offensively and win the playoffs. I don't know whether that works or not.
Yeah, I think it's fair to wonder whether their defense is good enough. We'll see. Because they haven't been in that position before where it's going to be really crucial that they buckle down and play defensively, and but their offense is great, there's no doubt about it. So it's going to be interesting to see, because it's that's the last thing that has to come together, is you got to prove you can play playoff style hockey for 16 wins over 4 rounds like that. That's a consistent, there's consistency, and then there's that, so.
Yeah, I did want to ask you a math question, Kev. If there was a 2.1% chance that it wasn't going to rain today, would you walk out of your house without an umbrella?
For sure I would, yeah.
You wouldn't, or you would?
I would, yeah. So
you would take that 2.1% chance that it's not going to rain?
Yeah, I wouldn't want an umbrella. I'd say, chances are good it's going to not rain. So
it's 97. No. It's 97.
He's saying he's not going to take an umbrella with him, Russ.
Right, which is crazy to me, because it's almost a 98% chance it's going to rain, and you're still.
I thought you phrased.
I know. I phrased it that way on purpose because that's the odds of the Islanders making the playoffs. That's why I phrased it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that 2% chance is just you're not going to win. So they're not getting to the playoffs. I'm with you guys. So.
So, okay. All right. Yeah, no. And
I just wanted to spell it out like a math teacher.
I am going to frame this and send it to the Smithsonian. Okay. All right. Great show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.